Space. Jerry, you don't push flat Earth. Don't you know NASA lies? Yeah, well, yeah, they do. They lie. Quite drastically do they lie. They lie real bad. You know. What amazes me is a high school kid with a physics book can't figure out how much they lie. It's kind of scary that they lie so much. And, well, most people just believe the lie. But what do they tell us? They tell us that space is a vacuum. Okay. The perfect vacuum. The vacuum of space. Well, we know certain things can and can't happen in a vacuum. Well, one thing we do know is that, well, a vacuum is the perfect insulator, right? That's why you have these coffee cups that are thermo-insulated, right? Vacuum out the air. Matter of fact, NASA even has some test facilities. A giant dome in Ohio. I don't know if it's still operational, where they test different things in what they would consider the vacuum of space. A few problems with what they tell us, though. What they tell us is, well, with this vacuum in space, we've got a space shuttle. Well, they don't use a space shuttle anymore, but, you know, that's what they told us in the past. But anyways, well, let's just use this as a reference for all spacecraft. Okay? And they say, hey, well, space is cold. What, like minus 200 or something like that? I'm not sure. I would have to look it up. I'm not that much of an autodidact when it comes to space. It doesn't concern me so much right now because I'm not living in space. I'm living right here and now. But you have the sun, okay? And the way kind of radiation works, yes, what we're receiving from the sun is radiation. That's why it radiates. That's why the sun's radiating. Okay? So, when the sun hits us, or hits the earth, or hits an object, it interacts with that object, heating that object. Okay? So we have Mr. Spaceship going up here in space, getting closer to the sun. Sun hits the spaceship. Of course, it's heating the spaceship. Now, heating the spaceship inside of a vacuum, well, think about it like this. If you were standing outside, all right, and let's say a bubble, okay, a bubble. Just like, you know, maybe a bubble a few extra feet around you that you can all, you know, reach. Big square bubble, round bubble, whatever you want to call it, you know. And inside that bubble, all the air is vacuumed out. Okay? So you're inside of a vacuum, okay? Of course, your cells would be popping and your blood would be boiling and all this and that just from the pressure itself. But we're told this is all pressurized, okay? And you're in this vacuum bubble. Sun heats you up just like it's going to heat anything else. You're going to start radiating, you know. You're going to start radiating inside your body. It's going to interact with that heat, that sun, that light. It's kind of like a microwave hitting you, you know. It's kind of how the sun works, like a microwave. And so you start heating up. But because you're inside of a perfect insulator, you're going to start to boil. You're going to need something to cool you down. Well, Jerry, I can put some air conditioning in there. Okay. So they put some air conditioning in the spaceship, space shuttle, whatever you like to call it. Okay. But wait a second. We're in a vacuum. We're in the vacuum of space. Don't forget about Mr. Kirby. Okay? Mr. Kirby. Sucking all the air around you while you're traveling in space. And you need air conditioning to work. Okay? So how are we going to get air conditioning to work? All right? We have a couple of different ways of air conditioning. We have, evaporation, cooling. We have a heat pump. We have a fan. Okay? Now, where's this water going to go? Okay? Condensation. Okay? You start the heat pump, in theory, okay? I know not everybody's going to understand this, but you got a fan, you got a heat pump, just like on your house or whatever. Vacuum of space, basically, the pressurized air is going to stop that fan from even working, okay? You can't operate a heat pump inside of a vacuum, okay? How would it work? In reverse? Doesn't make sense. So how's this shuttle, this spaceship, getting cooling? So they tell us, well, Jerry, you know what? They flip the spaceship. They flip it around from time to time. They let it spin. So, for a time it's on one side facing. I can't spin the picture, with this particular picture. But basically, they say, well, one side's facing the sun, and it gets too hot, they flip it over, they roll it to cool it down. But wait a second, you're in a vacuum. You're in the perfect insulator. That's a rotisserie. You're cooking yourself like a mother-freaking rotisserie chicken from Boston Chicken. So, we've got a problem here. Hey, let's not even get into the fuel thing, because that's a whole nother show in itself. The problem is what they tell us. It's not true. Could there be other ways that they do this and we're just not being told? Sure. Sure, it could be. Could be. Can't cancel it out. But what they're telling us is a straight up lie. They're lying. They're liars. They lie. From what I've seen from NASA, with its black budget for different psychological programs, it's really no different than CERN. Think of CERN as like Europe's NASA. It's an MKultra program. The people that go to work for NASA, just like CERN, are Fulbright scholars and different scholars that are basically MKultra. You can go to NASA and find out, I bet you it's filled with people from Stanford Research, because trace jet propulsion laboratory, man, right back to those same people. That's MKultra. NASA's an MKultra program, is what it is. Perception, deception, and they deceive people, and people have fallen for it. It's kind of scary if you think about it. But let's forget about the spaceship, okay? We're still in the vacuum of space. But what about this guy? Mr. Spacewalker. Okay? Now, when you examine his pack, his little, space backpack, there's no air conditioning. Nothing that can be seen. There's no port for an external heat pump. How are they being cooled? How? I can't say using water, water cooling the whole thing through the different little, tubes and stuff. I mean, in theory, can it be done? Does it make sense? It's not, Problem is, the water's going to get hot real fast. And if you really think about it, what are you going to do? You're going to put in, let's say you put on a suit, right? And then it's waterproof, like a wetsuit. And then over that you have a layer of water to cool, and then you put another layer of wetsuit so it locks it in or whatever, right? So you got this water just there to cool. Well, this microwave called the sun is going to heat up that water, and All you do is have a suit of boiling water. So how does that make sense? They need to explain how they're cooling themselves when they're out in space. Either that or start telling us the truth about space. Because what they're telling us is a lie. I know there's so many other things, but I wanted to put it in simple terms for people out there to understand. It's not just that they're lying about going to the moon. They're lying about either them being out doing spacewalks or the vacuum of space. One or the other, they're lying. Straight up lying. You know, talk to a HVAC guy, a heating and air conditioning person. Have them explain how air conditioning works, how cooling works. Ask them if air conditioning can work in a vacuum. You know, they might not understand the principles of a vacuum, but, you know, you might be able to learn from them just the basics of air conditioning and see that, hey, wait a second, this does not make sense. What NASA tells us may be bullshit. Not maybe bullshit, it is bullshit. Just like any other governmental MKultra type of program. And I know there's a MKultra name for each individual program out there. And hey, I think when it comes to space and that type of thing, wasn't it part of MKultra Naomi? And the whole convincing you that they can travel to the moon, that way you would believe that aliens can travel here. Right? So, there's problems. And this is why I never do count out flat Earth. I see, listen with the experiments I've tried, it proves that it's wrong. And this itself, just because we haven't traveled to the moon, or just because we don't have evidence that says a man walked in the vacuum of space, doesn't mean that, they lied about the vacuum part or some other part. But the evidence shows that they're lying. And when people are lying, you have to say, wait a second, we can't trust anything you say. Therefore, you can't trust nothing NASA tells you, because they're liars. They're liars. They need to explain how, Mr. Spaceman there is not boiling. They need to explain the intricacies of the vacuum of space without lying. Because, let me tell you something. It doesn't make sense that they can cool things. Not mechanically. And you need to cool things drastically. A mistake would be almost like instantly boiling somebody. When's the last time you've heard of an astronaut being boiled because of a small mistake here or there? One thing I've heard is all astronauts are Masons. And every time you come across an astronaut, yeah, they're a Mason. So, more Masonic bullshit and lies. Every time you see something, promoted by NASA, often the articles are little, like time-coded or something to do with the number 33. So, yeah. At the top of NASA, it's Masonic. The bottom of NASA are the people that, plug little things in here and there and think they're actually taking part in launching shit into space or this or that. They're all brainwashed. And if you really look at them, they're like, yeah, they're brainwashed. That's an MKultra program. That's what NASA's. It's like CERN. I know I do need to do another video about CERN, and I will. But I wanted to discuss this because I just thought it was so ridiculous. To me, that people don't understand that. Because there's a lot of people out there, they're mechanics, or, if they do work in heating and air conditioning, they should be able to, understand. Wait a second. No, it doesn't make sense that Mr. Spaceman is walking around out there. Now, I actually have some belief that they do some low orbit stuff. Because in theory, there's going to be that little part, that crossover part, where things become slightly weightless, but also are not exactly in the vacuum of space. Therefore, certain machinery could run. In theory, it's a possibility. Other problem with that is there should be a lot more problems with mechanical things once you get closer to the vacuum of space. Either that or space is not a vacuum. They need to just pick one of these things and go with it, because when they try and tell you all these different things and none of them work, it just makes them look ridiculous. And really, it makes anybody affiliated with NASA look like a freaking nut job, just for trying to tell you this moronic bullshit. You know? The sun's a giant freaking microwave. You put Mr. Spaceman, you put where's Mr. Shuttle? I forgot where I put Mr. Shuttle here. I can't find Mr. Shuttle. Where is Mr. Shuttle? Yeah, I don't know where Mr. Shuttle is. But anyways, Mr. Spaceman, Mr. Shuttle out here, and they're not like turning into the rotisserie chicken at Boston Market. No. Doesn't even make sense. And like I said, we don't even need to get into the whole fuel thing, how they got there in the first place. Doesn't make sense. The vacuum of space. We got space that's a Kirby vacuum, and they want all this mechanical shit to run in it, when that mechanical shit never even shows up on their equipment. It's scary when there's so many people out there that still believe, intelligent people, seemingly intelligent people believe the story they're told about space, or at least from the NASA standpoint, and they believe the story. It is quite amazing that NASA's been able to just keep that many people under their mind control. It's also kind of scary. But anyways, that's all I wanted to talk about. Is listen, Mr. Spaceman, we got some issues with you. You should be boiling, and your little shuttle thingy there, I don't know, should be roasted by now. So I want some explanations, because I think you're a freaking liar. You're a Masonic piece of crap.